everybody? Welcome back to another video. It is Wednesday, November 19th, 2025, and we are here to talk some more college football. Now, I do know ever since August, my channel's been primarily college football, and honestly, it's been primarily college football since I returned. And to those out there that aren't as interested in college football, I do apologize for that. It's just something I find easy to talk about. And I've been exploring some options to introduce to the channel more so starting in January once college football concludes. So bear with me there. I'm going to try to be getting more content onto the channel soon. The only thing it won't be is gaming because, I've already kind of talked about that. Gaming's no longer going to be on my channel. I took everything off, and yeah, it's going to be mainly everything but gaming. But just stay tuned for that. I'll be introducing some more stuff onto my channel. It will be sports related, but, I might try to bring some scrappy videos onto the channel, introduce more of her, try to get some more weather and science videos. You have it, you name it. But until January, just, be expecting college football videos. So, yeah. Looking at the thumbnail, I'm sure you can imagine what this video is about, so let's go ahead and get right into it. We're going to kick this thing off by talking about yesterday's release of the college football playoff rankings. We only have 2 more weeks until the regular season concludes, and then we have conference championship week, then the playoffs start. So we're not far from Selection Sunday. This season's been a wild one. A lot of entertaining things have happened. And, before we know it, college football will be over and we'll be in the off season not knowing what to do. But for now, let's take advantage while it's still here. So yesterday, the committee released the rankings. Coming in at number 1, we have Ohio State, to nobody's surprise. Indiana's number 2. Texas A&M's number 3. Georgia's number 4. Texas Tech's number 5. Ole Miss number 6. Oregon 7. Oklahoma 8th, Notre Dame 9th, Alabama 10th. That rounds out the top 10, of course. From there, BYU is 11th, Utah 12th, Miami 13th, Vanderbilt 14th, USC 15th, Georgia Tech 16th, Texas falls to 17th, Michigan 18th, Virginia 19th, Tennessee 20th, Illinois 21st, Missouri 22nd, Houston 23rd, Tulane 24th, and Arizona State rounding out the top 25. So based on the rankings, if it were to happen today, Ohio State would represent the Big Ten as the number 1 seed. Indiana would probably fall in at the number... From the way they're projecting things, Indiana would probably get a first-round bye. A&M would probably be 3rd, and call me crazy, but I think Texas Tech would get the 4th seed. But from the way it looks, the SEC is going to get 5 teams in the playoffs as of right now. We'll see how things pan out in the next 2 weeks, of course, but it's looking like the SEC is going to get 5 teams in. From there, the Big Ten could get 3. The Big 12 could get potentially 2. And then from there, you got whatever the heck comes out of the ACC and the Group of 5. We know the Group of 5 is guaranteed to get at least 1, though. So, right now that team would be Tulane. And honestly, I'm a little confused on that Tulane thing because I saw the rankings. And one of the first things I thought was, where are North Texas and James Madison? They're nowhere to be found. Right now, if I were to pick, I would take North Texas to represent the Group of 5. I mean, right now it's looking like North Texas and Navy for the American Championship. And if North Texas wins that conference, they only have 1 loss to South Florida, but South Florida was pretty respected throughout the whole season, so that's not a bad loss. And then, heck, what if Navy won the conference? And then, of course, you got James Madison representing the Sun Belt, but instead they went with Tulane. Tulane's in the American. So not only are they not number 1 in the Group of 5, they're not number 1 in their conference either. We're going to do a deep dive of the conferences in this video, and that'll kind of lead me to talking more about the playoffs in the next 2 weeks. But I don't quite understand how Tulane got the notch there. And from what the committee said last night, they're more so looking at losses this time around. I mean, that whole Notre Dame-Miami situation's going around right now. I figured head-to-head mattered more than anything. And now I have Notre Dame ranked in my top 25, but my top 25 isn't a playoff top 25. It's just a genuine, to AP top 25, basically, NOAA edition. I don't have a playoff ranking. I'm not going to have a playoff ranking. I might try to do some sort of playoff thing, but honestly, probably not. I'm going to just try to enjoy it instead of trying to, make a bracket or do some sort of special ranking. I'm just going to sit back and enjoy it and just make, basic top 25s. I think it's very fascinating with how they've got the playoffs going right now, but I think they're heading in a dark direction because we saw Miami beat Notre Dame 27-24 in the early stages of the season. And now it's looking like that's not going to matter. But you can defend Miami in the case that Notre Dame not only lost to them, they're not in a conference. And the only two teams worth a damn that Miami so Miami beat Notre Dame, number one. Texas A&M beat Notre Dame. So the only two teams worth a damn that Notre Dame has played, they've lost to. The only other team that could be recognizable is USC. I don't think they're making the playoffs. They still got to play Oregon this Saturday. So there's that. But so Notre Dame's best win would be USC. They lost 2 of their 3 ranked matchups. They're not in a conference. They're likely to finish 10-2. I understand that. But when you're an independent team, not in a conference, that seems a little unfair to the team that is a part of a conference and beats you head-to-head, Miami. In Notre Dame's defense, Miami is not anywhere near ACC title worthy. I'm not saying they're not a team worthy of such, but if you look at the standings, they right now would not even be near the ACC title game. Right now, today, it'd be Georgia Tech and Virginia. And then behind them, I think it's SMU. We'll take a deep dive and look here in a second. But so, yeah, overall, you got that whole Miami-Notre Dame situation. Then you got the Group of 5 situation. Not only that, the SEC has a bunch of weird tiebreakers they're about to have coming up. If it happened today, it'd probably be Texas A&M and Alabama, but you also got Georgia and Ole Miss right there. But, it's going to come down to probably the schedule, win percentage, and probably head-to-head opponents commonly beat among those 4. I don't know. It's going to be a process. Then, of course, the ACC, as we know, is a dumpster fire. The Big 12, it looks probably, I'd say the Big 10 and the Big 12 look pretty understandable. We can all make the assumption that in the Big 10, it'll be Ohio State and Indiana at this point, probably regardless. And then you got the Big 12, probably Texas Tech for sure, and then it's either going to be BYU or Utah. You can make those 2 firm beliefs, but the ACC and the SEC, you can pretty much assume A&M's going to be there, but who's going to be their opponent? That's what we still need to see. Right now, it'd probably be Bama. I don't know. And then ACC, there's no telling what's going to happen. Right now, I'd say Georgia Tech, Virginia, but who knows? But, yeah, so I told you the playoff rankings. I've kind of talked a little bit about, what's going on with those. Now we're going to go ahead and do a deep dive into the conferences. We'll go ahead and start with the American Conference. So as I was just saying, Navy is atop of the American right now. Their conference record's 6-1. They're 8-2 overall. Navy's signature wins, I would say, they have 1, South Florida. Navy's 2 losses are to North Texas and Notre Dame, both being on the road. Navy's remaining schedule is at Memphis and home against Army. Okay, well, let's take a look at North Texas. They're currently 5-1 in conference play, 9-1 overall. Their signature wins are against, I guess, Washington State. Are they even Power 4, though? They did lose to South Florida. And aside of that, they beat Navy. So, North Texas's schedule doesn't look as impressive loss-wise, but Navy, who has more impressive losses, I guess, lost to North Texas. So it's a big process. Tulane is now 24th, and they would be the 12th seed right now. They're third behind Navy and North Texas in the conference. So they put them in the playoff rankings. They would be the first-round bye. And as of today, Tulane wouldn't even compete for the American Championship. Tulane is 8-2 overall, 5-1 in conference play. Their signature wins, they have 2 Power 4 wins, being to Northwestern and Duke. They lost big to Ole Miss on the road. Oh, well, we know Ole Miss is really good this year. I would say the East Carolina win is solid, and they have a questionable loss to UTSA. Tulane, to me, they do have 2 Power 4 wins, but it's 2 mediocre Power 4 teams. And for a Group of 5 team, I guess that's something to, pat your head about. But overall, I'm not real sure the route they're trying to take with Tulane, but I don't like it. I mean, what, just because they got blown out by Ole Miss, you're just going to put them in over Navy and North Texas when they're both over Tulane? I don't know. I don't get it. From there, East Carolina is also 5-1 in conference play. They're 7-3 overall. Now, obviously, they're not going to make anything worthy. But East Carolina hasn't looked bad. They lost a close one to NC State. We know NC State's bad, but that's still impressive for a program like East Carolina. They lost to BYU. We all know BYU's pretty solid. And they lost to Tulane head-to-head. But they just beat Memphis. They've won 4 of their last 5, and their 2 games are both on the last 2 games are both on the road. So that's going to be a tricky spot, but they look both favorable. So East Carolina could finish 8-4 or 9-3. Either way, that's pretty good for them. But from there, I don't really see another team with a shot. South Florida has 2 losses. Memphis has 3 losses, both in conference play, by the way. And then South Florida and Memphis both have 3 losses. Memphis actually beat South Florida head-to-head. Memphis lost to Tulane and East Carolina. And then they had that questionable one to UAB. So overall, I think the American Conference race is between Navy, North Texas, Tulane, and East Carolina. But I don't think Tulane has any business being the 12th seed right now. So, yeah. Moving on to the ACC. Here are the teams in contention. Georgia Tech is 6-1, 9-1 overall. Their only loss being a very questionable one on the road to NC State. But let's be real here. We can never assume or predict that any team is going to go undefeated. It seems like eventually there's a team out there that's going to lose a questionable game. And then they had that struggle game to Boston College. But in Georgia Tech's defense, it was back-to-back conference games, so, they split them. Their remaining schedule, they host Pitt, and then they have that neutral site game against Georgia, which still shouldn't be a neutral site game. Dumbasses. Anyway, so I would say Georgia Tech, if they beat Pitt, they've locked up the ACC title spot. Meaning if they lose to Georgia, it really doesn't mean nothing because it'd be a second loss. Win your conference, you're probably in. And to those confused about that with seeing Miami in the bracket, the only reason Miami's in the bracket right now is because they're the highest ranked ACC team. Meaning the metric automatically assumes that Miami would be the ACC champion, so it's putting them in. Because if you notice, Georgia Tech and Virginia are atop of the conference. They're not even in the playoff rankings right now. They're in the top 25 playoff rankings, but they're not in the playoff 12 field, which is very bizarre. Now, that leads me to believe that the ACC will be lucky to get somebody in. I think they will, and I definitely think that an 11-2 Georgia Tech conference champion probably gets in. Second in the conference with basically the same record. They just have one more loss. Virginia is 6-1 in conference play, 9-2 overall. Now that NC State game in week 2 was scheduled as a non-con due to scheduling problems. So that was not a conference loss. Virginia's only other loss is at home to Wake Forest. And their last game is home against Virginia Tech on November 29th, so they don't play this week. They are 9-2, 6-1 overall in conference play. And Virginia, much like Georgia Tech, I say if they win out, that's your ACC title game. But what makes it crazy is that Pitt is also they're 5-1, but they also only have one loss in conference play. That being to Louisville. They have a questionable loss to West Virginia, but that was a non-con loss. And then they got blown out by Notre Dame, but that was also a non-con loss. So, and Pitt still has a chance to prove themselves. They play at Georgia Tech and home against Miami. So Pitt's not out of the conversation, but if Pitt makes it to the ACC title game, taking Virginia or Georgia Tech out, that's really going to hurt the ACC's odds. It's going to hurt them a lot. So we'll see how that pans out. SMU is also 5-1 in conference play, 7-3 overall, just like Pitt. SMU lost to Baylor in overtime. They lost at TCU, and then they lost at Wake Forest. So Wake Forest is playing spoiler to some of these teams, but SMU only has one conference loss, and they have a head-to-head win over Miami. They play Louisville this Saturday, and then they play at Cal. So I would say those are your teams in contention for the ACC title. So for Miami, of course, to get to the ACC title game, they have to win back-to-back road games at Virginia Tech and Pitt. Not only that, they're going to have to pray that SMU loses one, Pitt loses one, and either Virginia or Georgia Tech lose one to even have a chance at getting there. It's a tall task for Miami if they want to make the ACC title game. Miami lost to Louisville on a Friday night at home. Then they lost on the road at SMU. Now they have won 2 straight, and their schedule looks favorable. That Pitt game, though, that's going to be a struggle. But the ACC race from there is pretty self-explanatory. I don't think anybody else is in contention. And the only reason I mention Miami is because they're in the freaking playoff 12 right now. Now, like I said, it's based on the metrics, so we'll see, if that comes to fruition or not. But I'd say those are your teams in the ACC that have a shot. Moving to the Big 12. Big 12's pretty simple. Texas Tech 7-1, 10-1 overall. Their next game at West Virginia, November 29th. Texas Tech is likely to win that game. That would put them at 8-1, 11-1, and even if they lose, I still firmly believe, actually, that they're in the title game because they hold a tiebreaker over BYU and Utah, and that's second and third. They also hold a tiebreaker over Houston. Houston's fourth. So I pretty much think Texas Tech is going to the Big 12 title game. It's pretty much who's going to join them from there. BYU lost to Texas Tech, but that's their only loss. And they have a head-to-head over Utah. The rest of the way, they play at Cincinnati this Saturday. Then they host UCF. If they lose that game to Cincinnati, they'll have 2 losses. They'll have 2 conference losses, just like Utah. Utah has to win out. We'll talk about their schedule here in a second. For BYU, though, of course, they're looking to win out. If they win out, they're going to the Big 12 title game with Texas Tech. If they lose one of those games, gets interesting. Because if Utah wins out, BYU also has 2 losses. I think BYU still gets in. It's that UCF game that's questionable. They do get them at home, though. And then Utah. They've won 4 of their last 5. Their last loss was at BYU by 3. Texas Tech torched them. Utah's remaining schedule is against Kansas State and at Kansas. Both of those games look very favorable. Utah will likely be 10-2, 7-2 in conference play. And if you're a Utah fan, you're praying that BYU loses their next 2 games. If Utah wins out and BYU loses out, Utah's going to the Big 12 title game against Texas Tech. Houston, they play TCU and then at Baylor. I don't think Houston gets in. I think the only way Houston goes to the Big 12 title game is if Utah and BYU both lose out and Houston wins out. But realistically, I don't see that happening. And then, of course, you got Arizona State as well at 5-2. Cincinnati also at 5-2 in conference play. But honestly, I think your Big 12 title game will either be Texas Tech and BYU or Texas Tech and Utah. I don't see a way Texas Tech doesn't go to the Big 12 title game. So that's your Big 12 update. Big 10 looks fairly simple. Indiana, 8-0, 11-0. They have 1 game left at Purdue. Even if they lose that, they're probably going to the conference title game. Ohio State, they are 7-0 conference play, 10-0 overall. Rutgers looks favorable this Saturday. That'll put them at 8-0, 11-0, just like Indiana. So even with a Michigan loss, like they have always done since like 2019, looks very favorable that Ohio State will be going to the Big Ten title game. So it's looking like Indiana, Ohio State. Teams with maybe some hope. Oregon is 6-1, 9-1 right now. They play USC this Saturday, College Game Day, and USC is right behind them at 8-2, 6-1 in conference play. I firmly believe that if USC beats Oregon, I think Oregon's out of the playoffs, even if they win at Washington. But if they lose to USC, that's going to kill their spirits going to rival Washington on the road. You know for sure Washington would like to play spoiler. That's a big game for Oregon. USC, on the other hand, if they beat Oregon, their only game left would be UCLA. That looks favorable. So there is a chance that if USC wins, they take Oregon out and maybe get in the playoff field. The problem is I don't think either team is going to get around Indiana or Ohio State. I think that's going to be your Big Ten title game. Michigan's also 6-1 in conference play. Their 1 loss is to USC. So, I mean, USC already holds a tiebreaker over them. And I don't think Michigan's going. Even if they win out, I don't think they're going to go because Indiana and Ohio State are so set in stone. So that's your Big Ten update. Conference USA, I don't think there's a chance any of them make the playoffs. So I'm not even going to discuss that conference. My prediction on the Conference USA title games looking pretty good, though. Took Jacksonville State or Western Kentucky to win it, and they're both at the top of the conference right now, probably set to play each other for the conference. Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State actually face off at the end of the year in Jacksonville State. So we'll see. Kennesaw State might have a chance of playing spoiler to get to the Conference USA title game, but I'm thinking Jacksonville State and Western Kentucky will probably be your title game there. Independents are obviously Notre Dame, UConn, so they nothing to talk about there. Notre Dame hasn't lost since September 13th by 1 to Texas A&M. They started 0-2. Since then, they've racked up some wins. They beat Purdue. Purdue sucks. They beat Arkansas. Arkansas sucks. They did beat Boise State. They beat NC State. But those aren't high caliber wins. They beat USC. That's probably easily their best win aside of Navy. Their remaining schedules against Syracuse and Stanford. That's not looking very good resume-wise, but it's Notre Dame. They're going to find a way to put them in. Not going to talk about the MAC or the Mountain West or the Pac-2. No, none of them are going to have a shot. The SEC. This is interesting here. So the SEC, Texas A&M right now, 7-0, 10-0 overall. They play Samford this Saturday. That'll put them at 11-0, most likely. Then they play at Texas. And that's a night game too. I think we're likely to see Texas upset them. I'm gonna be honest. I think we are. But regardless, I don't know. I don't think that'll take A&M out of the title game. Now, that might help Georgia because Georgia beat Texas, but Alabama beat Georgia. Alabama didn't play A&M, neither did Georgia. Ole Miss didn't play Alabama, but Ole Miss lost to Georgia. Ole Miss didn't play A&M. Nobody played A&M. None of the three behind A&M played A&M. So that's what I'm gonna say keeps A&M in the title game. Then it's gonna go between Georgia, Ole Miss, and Alabama. Okay, well, Alabama owns head-to-head over Georgia. Georgia owns head-to-head over Ole Miss. So what are they going to do there? Ole Miss didn't play Bama. I don't know. Ole Miss is 6-1, 10-1. Georgia 7-1, 9-1. Alabama 6-1, 8-2. Those are probably your four teams competing for the SEC. I don't think Oklahoma, Vandy, or Texas have a chance. And from there, Missouri and Tennessee on down are definitely not in contention. But I don't know. As it stands in the SEC, Texas A&M and Georgia, based on where they are, would be your title game. But I think, based on the metric and everything, Alabama probably gets in. If Alabama loses to Auburn, though, and Oklahoma wins out, Alabama will fall below Oklahoma in the SEC standings. So then it's either going to be Georgia or Ole Miss. Well, Georgia doesn't play another SEC game. They're done. Their next two games are conference games. So that locks up them right there at 7-1 in the SEC. Their only loss being to Alabama. So Georgia doesn't have another title conference game. So that doesn't hurt them at all, actually. Ole Miss has one more. They play Mississippi State November 29th. Well, actually, it's November 28th, but the week of November 29th. If Ole Miss wins that, they'll be 7-1 in conference play. Let's say A&M loses to Texas, they'll be 7-1. Let's say Bama wins at Auburn, they'll be 7-1. So you'll have four teams at 7-1 in conference play, potentially. Or A&M wins out, and Bama maybe loses Auburn. I don't know. The SEC looks very interesting. If I had to make my prediction, I'm going to say either Texas A&M, Georgia, Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Texas A&M, Alabama. I'm going to make a bold prediction here and say that Texas A&M's a lock. We'll see. So that's your SEC update. Sun Belt. Right now, it's looking like James Madison's 9-1, 7-0 overall. They got 2 games left. Both look favorable. If James Madison wins out, goes 11-1, 8-0 in conference play, wins their conference, that'll put them at 12-1. What does the committee do with them versus Tulane? Because I still don't see how Tulane is in this. I don't know. Me personally, right now, I think it should either be Navy, North Texas, or James Madison. Tulane has no business being right there. But, that's the committee for you. So yeah, that's pretty much the deep dive currently. We got 2 weeks remaining in the regular season. Then we have conference title game weekend. That's going to determine a lot right there. But yeah, overall, if I had to make my predictions right this minute, I say North Texas wins the American. I say Georgia Tech wins the ACC. I think Ohio State wins the Big Ten. Texas Tech wins the Big 12. Alabama wins the SEC. James Madison wins the Sun Belt. From there, whatever. If I had to pick, I guess Conference USA, I'll say Western Kentucky or Jacksonville State. I'm going to say one of them. I'm going to stick by that. If I had to pick a MAC champion, I was going to say Ohio, but I don't know. The MAC's kind of hard to choose one. So, Sun Belt, James Madison, pretty self-explanatory. I don't know. But yeah, playoff 12. It's kind of too early for me to really make a prediction and sit down and calculate it because of everything I just told you. So, yeah, that's what's going on there. I'm excited for this last 2 weeks of the regular season. We'll see what happens. Tennessee plays at Florida. Then they host Vandy. Big game for Vandy there. But, yeah, that's been another playoff and conference deep dive with Noah Livingston. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope to make more like it soon. It's just hard for me every now and then, but I'm going to try to get more than just a recap video and the top 25 out every week. So bear with me. I hope you have enjoyed all my videos to this point. I try, given what I'm given. I mean, I record off a phone. I don't have any fancy technology. So to the ones that do stick around and watch, I appreciate it. And, if you don't like my cussing or if you don't appreciate how I act on these videos sometimes, I do apologize. I do have these real videos every now and then. So to those that enjoy the content, I'm happy for you. I appreciate the support. And if you ever have any suggestions, just let me know. But yeah, that'll wrap things up here. It's been Noah Livingston, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.